We were not born critical of existing society. There was a moment in our lives, or a month, or a year, when certain facts appeared before us, startled us, and then caused us to question beliefs that were strongly fixed in our consciousness, embedded there by years of family prejudices, orthodox schooling, imbibing of newspapers, radio, and television. This would seem to lead to a simple conclusion, that we all have an enormous responsibility to bring to the attention of others information they do not have, which has the potential of causing them to rethink long-held ideas. This week's opening quote comes from Howard Zinn. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I'll be your host for the next hour. The world of today seems to be so far skewed from what reality should be, and people who live within our societies seem so disconnected from reality and so detached from each other and so oblivious to their surroundings and so in need of information that when one really steps back and looks at the situation, sometimes the hurdles we face can seem insurmountable. And yet, even though we live in such a divided society, in such a detached society, we are still seeing a huge amount of people who are waking up to reality and waking up to the fact that all is not right, and that in fact something is terribly wrong. They're not quite sure what is wrong in many cases, but they know that there is something that is not right. Many people are beginning to see that the governments simply don't have their best interest at heart. What's going on here with the mining in this country has shown it very clearly to the people in this country. What recently transpired in Nevada in the United States, where the government attempted to basically confiscate a farmer's cattle, also served as a very clear demonstration that the US government does not have the interest of the citizens at heart. And it was very reassuring and very gratifying to see so many people go to that event and stand up for the farmer, and it was especially gratifying to see sheriffs and political people there standing with him. What's happening here with the coal seam gas protests that are happening at Bentley in northern New South Wales has also been very reassuring. We've had up to 2,000 and 3,000 people showing up at the blockade to the Bentley gas well. I'm actually going down there to speak this Monday morning, so that should be interesting as well. And what I intend to do when I'm in Bentley is talk to the people about approaching the matter from a completely different perspective to the way they have been approaching the matter, because I truly believe there is a higher harmonic, and I think that the protests at Bentley in northern New South Wales may well be the turning point for this country. I think that we have an opportunity here to turn the whole system around, because as I said a couple of years ago, I really believe coal seam gas to be a pivotal key that will unite the people of this country, and I believe that we can turn the whole thing around this weekend at Bentley if the people on the ground get the information that they need and they adjust their perspective of how to deal with this situation. Because, as I've said so many times, folks, you can't deal with this using legal parameters. You have to step above the legal system and you have to approach it from a perspective of trust and realize what these people are. Realize that all of the problems that we face, all the gas wells and everything that's happening is the result of government legislation, and that these people are in breach of trust for even allowing the situation to escalate to what it is. I really believe that with this gas protest at Bentley, we can use the amount of people there, the public attention that it's got, to turn things around and in fact contest the government's ability to do what it's doing and challenge the government to show us how it justifies its actions. Because If we approach things from that perspective, we're going to find that the government cannot justify its actions in any way. And we could, in fact, create a movement which may even effectively be able to dismiss the New South Wales government and possibly even the federal government. Because it's getting to the point in this country where we have to do this. We have to call a spade and take these criminals in hand and beat them at their own game. And this issue, I believe, provides us with the tools we need to do so. And I believe we can formulate a workable plan and do it in a public enough manner that we can beat them at their own game, even using their own system. Because we have to use their system to a certain degree, simply because there are so many people that believe that system is real. And so we have to show them how to use the system to step above the system. And I think we have a chance to re-educate the entire country with this issue if we approach it from the correct perspective. And that's what I hope to start rolling on Monday morning when I go down to speak to the hopefully 2,000 or 3,000 people that will be there over the Easter weekend. And I'm certainly looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to it because these people are obviously passionate enough about this issue to be there, and they are obviously looking for solutions. And I believe that if they get the correct information, a light bulb may go off in their heads and it may change the way they approach the issue. I really do think it's a huge opportunity for us, folks, and I hope that if you are anywhere near the area of northern New South Wales, you will support the action that's going on the ground at Bentley in order to stop this well, because we can use this to contest the authority of the government as long as the people are willing to be involved so that we can make it happen. And there is a real need for us to do this, folks, because things are really heating up on the ground here in Australia. The police and the government are just getting out of control in this country. Most especially the police. What we're seeing in this country is more and more police violence being acted against the citizens of the country, and we are seeing less and less response from the legal system and from the court system in regard to this type of police violence. However, the instances of police brutality in this country are escalating greatly. By way of example, a few weeks ago there was a lady who was talking on her mobile phone in the car. We're not actually sure whether she was talking, she just had it in her hand. She was pulled over by a police officer who said, "I've just observed you talking on the mobile phone." The woman said, "How can you prove that I was actually talking on it? How can you prove that I was using it? Because I wasn't. I was just looking at the time." And the police officer said, "Well, I observed you using the phone." And the woman only had the window down a little bit with the police officer. She wouldn't put the window right down because she was being intimidated by this man. And he asked her to hand her mobile phone over to him, and she said no, she'd like to keep it as evidence. And then she actually called her husband, who lived around the corner, and he came around and got into the car with her just to protect her. This is a 45-year-old woman, and this was a 60-year-old husband that she had. Neither of them have had any criminal record. Neither of them have had any run-ins with the police in their life. The police officer ended up smashing the window of the car, covered the woman in glass, dragged her out of the car, pushed her face into the ground, put her hands behind her back and handcuffed her. When the man alighted from the vehicle and attempted to protect his wife, he was also beaten by police. He was thrown to the ground, had his face pushed into the ground, was beaten and kicked, handcuffed, and both of them were taken to court. And the corrupt judge, of course, said that the police had done nothing wrong, that the police couldn't possibly do anything wrong because they are the police, and the people were railroaded and fined. Now, this is over a mobile phone, folks. Windows smashed, thrown on the ground, faces pushed into the ground, handcuffed, beaten, and kicked over a mobile phone. This isn't an armed robbery. This isn't a violent assault. This isn't someone who stole something or did something bad to anybody. This was someone who was using a phone. And this is the response from the brain-dead, intellectually inept terrorist scumbags we now have working as police in Australia. The Australian police of modern times are incredibly violent and absolutely intellectually inept. It's unbelievable, folks. These people are stupid thugs. That's basically what they are. But again, it's very difficult to blame these people for what they do because they are covered in all of this electronic equipment, which I suspect also delivers frequencies to their brain which keeps them intellectually inept and locks them into an aggressive demeanour where they just are itching to carry out whatever act of brutality they are able to get away with against whatever member of the public they happen to be talking to. And this is the situation that we're going in. This is the direction our country is heading. And that is, again, one of the reasons why it is time for the people of this country to stand up for their rights, because if they do not do so, this country will be locked down and it will simply not be a safe place to live anymore due to the extreme actions of the corrupt and criminal government currently holding the reins of power in Australia, and the corrupt, criminal and brutish police that carry out their every will with absolute impunity in their actions. And look, there are many police who also agree with this type of reflection of our society. There are many police who really don't agree with the actions of modern police, the actions of the new inductees, if you will. There's a lot of old school police officers who are very, very disturbed about the trend that they are seeing in modern law enforcement. And of course, many of these people have been spoken to by people such as the Queensland Police Commissioner, who openly stated that any police officer who felt like questioning the totally reprehensible VLAD legislation, the legislation which basically says that people are guilty until proven innocent. He says that any police officers who question it and do not wish to enforce this legislation should reconsider their career choices. So here we see that not only are they bringing in a lot of brain-dead thugs and training them to be brutish, but they are also attempting to remove from the police force any officers of integrity and any officers who wish to stand up against any type of government criminality. They don't want that. They don't want people who are caring, people who are thoughtful, people who will question authority and do the right thing, people who have high moral standards. What they want are people who are absolutely obedient and are prepared to carry out whatever violence is necessary in order to enforce whatever corporate legislation they are handed. And that is unfortunately what we're getting. And that is another reason why the people of this country seriously need to pay attention to their surroundings and seriously need to start standing up to this government. And I believe that if we can stand up to the coal seam gas industry at Bentley and hold this government accountable for their actions, then we will succeed in turning things around. But I think it has to be done now, folks. We can't let things get any worse. We really do have to take the matter in hand. And so how may the matter be dealt with? How may we take the matter in hand? Well, as I believe I may have mentioned on the show last week, what we have here in Australia is an industry which is threatening the most valuable resource in this country, namely water. Water is the most valuable resource in Australia because Australia is virtually a desert nation. Now, we have laws, legislation in place in this country which says that it is illegal to pollute groundwater, and here we have an industry which is threatening groundwater. Now, when I make that statement and say that here we have an industry that is threatening groundwater, what the government will say to me in response is that there is no conclusive evidence that shows that this is true, that shows that it does pollute groundwater. But what I will offer them in response to their response is that there is no conclusive evidence that it doesn't. And seeing as how water is the most valuable resource in this country, what the government needs to supply me with is the results of the studies they have done prior to commencing this controversial industry, which clearly show conclusively that this does not damage the water table, because water, again, is the most valuable resource in the country. And if they cannot show me the studies that they have conducted before this industry was commenced, then they need to show cause why this government and each member of government that has supported this industry should not be held in abuse of office and tried and held accountable for their actions. And if the government won't do this and the legal system won't touch it, and if we can't take it to the Supreme Court to try these people for their actions, then this issue is so important that it warrants the formation of a grand jury, whereby we can put it all back into common law and dismiss the government. Because were the people of this country to indicate that they have a loss of confidence in this government's ability to govern and wish to hold this government accountable for abuse of office, it warrants the formation of a grand jury, and we have the ability to dismiss this entire government. I mean, ultimately, the best thing to do would be to step above the whole thing and realize that it's all fiction and step into our power and walk away from the system. But unfortunately, with the amount of programmed people in the world, that's not going to happen. So what we need to do is approach it in a manner whereby the common people of the country can understand it. The people who believe the legal fiction is real can understand it and can identify with what you're doing. So we can use this as a pathway back to autonomy, back to something which will empower the human race. But we have to start somewhere. And of course, we have to start as far removed from the legal system as possible, yet still within its parameters to a certain degree, simply so people can understand it. We have to kind of walk on the edge of a knife with one foot in the fiction and one foot in reality. And we can do that via the formation of a grand jury. And the only thing that we need for this to happen is the support of the people. So should this gas well at Bentley be stopped, and should this go to trial, and should the formation of a grand jury occur, we need all the people on the ground at Bentley, the 3,000 people that are there, to show up outside the trial. We need 3,000 people outside the courthouse when this goes to trial. We need 30,000 people. We need 3 million people outside the courthouse when this goes to trial. Because otherwise the case will get railroaded, because that's what happens. You take a case like this, which may actually affect government, into a closed court, and the government will get the outcome it wants. Simply because the deck is stacked, and everybody within the system works for the Crown. The judge works for the Crown, the prosecutor works for the Crown, the lawyers work for the Crown, the court is a court of the Crown. So what we need to do is we need to have a grand jury in a common law court, and we need to have enough people there so that we can say to the judge, well, there is a great deal of public interest in this case, and therefore we need television cameras brought into the courtroom so that the entire country can view the proceedings of this case. And we need to do this, and we need to not take no for an answer, and we need to not back down. To anybody who says that we cannot do this and we cannot form a grand jury, well, yes, we can, because we, the people, hold control of this country, and we, the people, have control of our government, should we wish to exercise that control. And the coal seam gas industry and the threat to the water table that it poses is something that is serious enough to warrant a lawful rebellion of the entire nation and a grand jury formed aimed at dismissing the entire government of this country. And that is the approach we need to have, and that is what I believe we will be able to achieve if this information can be brought to the people on the ground at Bentley, simply because there are so many people there that are supporting this stance against the coal seam gas industry and the threat to the water table that it poses. This could well be the turning point, ladies and gentlemen, as long as people are willing to get involved and to really get their hearts behind it and to really stand up and be counted, because this is a very, very important issue. We could literally change the direction this country is going in right here at this gas well, folks. And all it's going to take is the participation of the people. Of course, something else that it's going to take is for me to be allowed to speak, so it will be interesting to see if they actually do let me speak this time, because I've been to many of these rallies before, and once they find out what I'm going to talk about, usually they cancel my speech. So we'll just see how things go this weekend. And you know, I think that if we took this avenue and we did something like form a grand jury and have this government dismissed, I think that we would find we have a surprising amount of support from certain political figures and even within the ranks of the police and legal system. I think there are many, many people within the ranks of the system who really would like to see change, but they can't do it themselves because they're caught within the parameters of the system. They've all sworn oaths, they've all locked themselves legally by conscious choice within a system that has turned out to be sociopathic and not have anybody's best interests at heart. But it's very difficult for them to find a way out. That's why it's up to the people to act, because we are the ones who have all the power, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about that. We have the power to affect any change we wish to affect if we can simply respect each other enough to stand up and do it. And this is information that I've been sharing with you for 7 years now. We really can do this, folks, if we just put all this stuff down. Put all the stuff down that you have with people. Put all the stuff down you have with your neighbours. It doesn't matter what anybody did in the past, folks. Nobody was given an even playing field. And so many people acted in desperate and nefarious ways in order to try to survive through this system and survive and keep their head above water by any means possible. Because that's what the system trains people to do. That's the sort of position the system puts people in by default. And it causes people to behave in a sociopathic manner in order to survive. That's what this system's all about. It's a great way of keeping society divided. So put it all down. It doesn't matter what anybody did. What matters now is what we do from this point forward. And if we can simply put all of this past baggage away, put away all of our racial and religious and social differences, and view each other as being of equal value, then we could change the world in a single day. That's really all it would take, folks, if we could just do that. Put down all this stuff. It's not your stuff anyway. It's stuff you've been trained to have. And we've all been trained to do this. We've all been trained to judge ourselves and judge other people by parameters which are not our own. We've been given someone else's version of reality and we've been told to make it work. But it's not a workable reality. It's not a workable system. Well, I suppose it depends on how you look at it. It is quite workable if you're the one at the top pulling the strings. That's the thing with the system, really, isn't it? That many people look at it and they think the system is broken. But I would argue that no, it's not broken. It's actually working very well and doing exactly what it's designed to do. But the beauty of this time in history is that now we can all see that. And now we can all see the system laid bare for what it is. And so, therefore, we have at last been provided with what we need to see things clearly, should we choose to do so. And so we've been provided with the best opportunity, the first opportunity we've ever had in human history to really be free and to really step into our own power and take responsibility for our own actions. We can see the workings of the mechanism so clear now, ladies and gentlemen, and because it's so clear, now we have the opportunity to do something about it. Now we have the greatest opportunity in human history for freedom. All we have to do is respect each other enough to implement the changes that we need to create a viable future, because they're right there at our fingertips. All we have to do is step into our role. And I think that's what we're here to do. I think that's what this time in history is. And I think that's what is so significant about this time in history. I think that's what the 2012 date was all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about putting us in this moment in time where we now have the opportunity to actually choose which direction we go in. But the change has got to come from the collective, ladies and gentlemen. It's got to come from changes within the collective consciousness. But of course, these changes will only occur through action that is undertaken by the individual within the collective, because it is the actions of the individual which influence the collective. And that's why you've got to lead by example and do the right thing in all that you do. Do the best in all that you do. Be all that you can be and experience the art of your life and the art of your own creative potential to its fullest. That's what you're here to do, folks. And that's what we have at this time. We can change the world if we just choose to participate and apply ourselves to it. And that's what this time is, folks. And it's a hell of an exciting time to be here. It really is. And it's great to be able to share the journey with everybody as well. It's been a real journey for me since I began these radio shows. It really has. I started speaking to you on air back in 2008, I think it was, late 2008, when I first got interviewed by John Lipscomb. And of course, the show Surviving the Matrix started in January 2009. And I've been speaking to you ever since about these topics. And it's been an interesting growth period in my life. I really have learned a lot of things since I began this show. I've really had an interesting journey, and it's been interesting seeing the journey of the people around me, and interesting hearing the journey of the listeners as well, through the many emails that you write to me, through the many people who post on my Facebook pages and who post in the Crowhouse forums. Of course, I don't get time to go to the forums much anymore. I actually haven't visited any of the forums this year. And I apologise for that. If anybody has been making posts in any of the forums and hoping for a response from me, I'm simply not able to go there most of the time. But it has really been interesting watching people grow. And it's been really humbling and a great honour to share the journey with the many people that I've shared it with along the way and through the path that these radio shows have taken. Interesting times, folks, and certainly not something I had ever planned to do. If you asked me 10 years ago if I ever thought I would be a radio host or a filmmaker, there's no way I would have said yes. It is absolutely the last thing that was ever on my mind. It's funny how life just progresses and puts us where we are supposed to be. But you always know when you're on the right path, because when you're on the right path, things just fall into place. The ride may be a little uncomfortable sometimes. Sometimes things may fall into place in ways that you don't really like, and it may be a bit of a jolt and a bit of a shock to the system, and you may find yourself in circumstances you didn't plan on. But ultimately, if you're open to it, I've found that the universe will put you where you need to be. It'll always be what you had planned in some way, but it may just be that the universe had planned a different route for you to get there. I often think that we place far too much emphasis on the outcome of our plans rather than on the journey we make to the destination, because really I believe it's about the journey. And the journey of mankind has certainly been interesting of late. Things really have escalated in the last 10 years. They've really escalated in the last few decades, but the last 10 years have been absolutely amazing, really, how fast things have been moving. And the control grid that is being put in place is really coming into full view now, almost more every day. They are really stepping things up, really bringing the hammer down, so to speak. The Trans-Pacific Partnership has really sealed things for all of the nations that are involved in that. And this is why the people have to pay attention to this as well. People really have to step up. We've got to take our countries back, folks. And I'm sure that there are many people working within the parameters of the system that can see the necessity of this as well. As I said, what recently happened in the United States at the Bundy Ranch, where many sheriffs and even political figures were standing up to protect the farmer and his cattle, shows that the powers that believe they be are really not going to have things quite as easy as they anticipated. There are many people that are awake to what is going on, and there are many people who are prepared to stand their ground against the tyranny that our governments are bringing in. My immediate concern, of course, though, is for the people of Australia, because that's where I am. And the system really is being ramped up exponentially here. The control grid is being brought into place very rapidly. The Abbott government is really stepping things up a notch. And so that is an immediate concern for me, and I do hope the people of this country wake up and do something about it. Hopefully that's the ball we can begin to get rolling through the action that we may be able to undertake at the Bentley gas well. Yes, so I think we are at a particularly significant time in history, folks, and I know you've heard me say that many times as well. But I do. I think we are at a pivotal time in history. I think that this is the first time in human history we've really had the opportunity to change things, and I really think we are going to change them as well. I believe that we are going to do this. It was really interesting seeing the blood moon the other night as well. Apparently this is a biblical event. The blood moon is apparently supposed to signify the beginning of the end times, and apparently they are a very rare occurrence, and apparently there's going to be a number of blood moons. I think 4 blood moons are going to be visible in the next 6 months or in the next year or something like that. Someone was talking to me about it the other day, and I know there is more than one of these going on. And when I went out for a drive the other night, Ben Stewart and I had to go out and pick up some supplies, and we happened to drive out of my driveway, and we were driving down this country road right at the time of the blood moon eclipse. And there it was, right through the window of the car. And we got to view the entire eclipse on the way to our destination and on the way back, which was really quite a remarkable event. Made even more remarkable by the fact that we didn't really realise that it was on that night. We didn't know what time it was on, but we just happened to drive out of the driveway at the perfect time with which to get a bird's eye observation of the whole thing. I'm not quite sure why we were both meant to see it, but it would appear that we obviously were. I don't know what it signifies, but I guess it may signify something. Perhaps, hopefully, it signifies that we are nearing the end of the battle. Perhaps that's what the end times actually are. Perhaps it's the time that we free ourselves from this system by our own participation. because we have the ability to do it, folks. All we have to do is get involved. And I take it as a good sign anyway that I happen to see that moon right before this action is about to be undertaken at the Bentley gas well. I really do believe that it may be a turning point, folks, and perhaps I'm just optimistic, but I tend to take such things as a good sign. I tend to take all such things as good signs, folks. Perhaps it's just because I feel that we need the encouragement. But I think all the things that are happening are a good sign. I think the fact that the system has been laid so bare is a good sign. I think the fact that they're attempting to ramp things up so much and so blatantly is a good sign, because it's waking more and more people up. And it gives us more and more fuel with which to wake people up for those who are not already awake. And I think we should use all of this fuel, folks, because as I've said so often lately, the gloves have to come off this year. They really do. We can't continue to operate within the parameters that these people give us. We've got to step above the whole thing. And I think we're being provided with the tools we need to do so. We just have to take the opportunity. And it's important that we do, and it's important that we do it together, ladies and gentlemen, because people aren't having any success doing it individually. So it has to be done collectively. And I really have seen people attempting to do it individually, and it's never worked. It really hasn't. I mean, there's a lot of people that have found a lot of information about the birth certificate, about common law, about all sorts of ways through the legal system. We've had the free man movement spring up and attempt to bring all of this type of information to people in various countries around the world. And we've also had people attempting to use the free man information to find a way through the system. Some of them have had small modicums of success in their actions. You may get little victories here and there, but there's been no real overall showstoppers. There's been nothing that's really hit the system like a brick and stopped the system in its tracks. It's always just little ways through, little avenues, and it always depends on the whim of the judge. And we've had people armed with this knowledge attempting to take the system on personally and individually, and we found them getting railroaded despite what they know, despite what's legal, despite what's lawful, despite what's right or wrong or what the correct moral value of any situation is. The government and the legal system just railroad these people. If you believe you can defend yourself through court, well, they just arrest you and put you in jail without letting you go to court. Look at what's happened to Dean Clifford. He was just arrested. He's been thrown in jail. He's been in solitary for months. I think he's out now, but he was in there for a very long time. So people aren't having any success as individuals. And if they are having any success, I mean, Dean may not be in jail now, but he's been in jail for a long time. And what we find is that these people are just being made examples of. And if by success you mean spending lots of time in jail and then being released again, I don't see this as being successful. I see that we don't want to be spending any time in jail at all. And so what I can see is that the only way through the system is as a collective. I mean, even with the sui generis information that I've been bringing to people, if you try this by yourself, you'll probably get railroaded. But if the whole community does it, then the government doesn't have anywhere to go. You need a lot of public attention with all of these issues, folks, and you need strong communal ties so that your community stands up with you, because we need to address this matter as a collective. Even with the sui generis status, folks, I cannot speak for you because you are sui generis as well. I can only speak for me. That's the thing. We have to do it together. I cannot claim your freedom for you. You have to do that for yourself, and it's the same for every single person. And that's why we need this communal spirit, which is why we need to put down all of these fictional barriers that have been created between ourselves and our neighbours and the people around us. You know, all of the barriers that are there, all of the judgment that we hold for others, it's all other people's ideas. It's all parameters that we've been given by other people. It's not anything that we've constructed ourselves. And even people who attack other people online, people who attack other researchers and people they don't even know based on hearsay that they've read on the internet. What is wrong with these people? Why is everybody attacking everybody else and everyone's working to create disunity while claiming they're enlightened? It doesn't make sense, and there's so many researchers that do it. There's so many researchers and voices within the alternate research community who spend all of their time attacking other people. It's just ridiculous, folks, and it's what perpetuates the problem. Indeed, it is the foundation stone of the control system, is the division that is perpetuated within our society, most of which is perpetuated by ourselves. And people really need to wake up to this and snap out of their self-absorbed, hateful, ego-driven mindsets and start respecting the people around them. Even the other researchers, it doesn't matter if someone's got research that says something different to you. Put it all on the table together and put your egos aside, and let's find the common thread through the whole thing so we can find what the real story is. But too many people don't do that. They just get locked in tunnel vision of my way is the right way, I'm the guru, and so I will attack everybody else, and anybody who speaks out against me must be a government plant, must be disinformation, and so I'll post articles of hatred about them. That's what people do. It's just ridiculous, folks, and divide and conquer rules the waves. It's just absurd, and it's a program that people are running, and we need to snap out of it and put down all of this division and turn and face the actual cause of the problem, which is our out-of-control runaway governments. Because why these governments are so out of control and why they are such runaway entities is because of the division of our society. Because that division is what prevents us from standing up as one united voice and actually addressing the problem and instilling a little accountability into our political structure. Because only we can do that, folks. Don't expect the politicians to do it. All they will do is give themselves pay rises. They won't have any accountability instilled into the system at all. Well, maybe a little bit on the surface, but basically they're just a bunch of liars and thieves, and so the only watchdog that will ever work regarding our political system is the people themselves. We are the watchdog, folks. We hold the reins of power should we choose to exercise our ability to rein this system in. But we don't, because we judge each other by parameters that are given to us by the system. And that's where it all breaks down. You know, there are so many things that have been put in place to keep society programmed, to keep society divided. The psychic pathogens that I often talk about, the economic, social and religious pathogens, do a great deal of damage to human consciousness. There's also the structure of our cities and the structures of our buildings. Many of our buildings are designed to channel energy. We find sigils marked in our buildings, we find sigils in our streets. The very layout of the streets in our cities are often sigils that create certain energy fields. There are buildings that are designed to channel energy. There's a huge electromagnetic control grid that's been put in place in the last 10 to 20 years. This has been a huge problem as well, folks. I mean, this is why we've seen things escalate so much. This is why we're seeing our police becoming so violent. It's why we're seeing people become more and more disconnected. We find people more interested in what's happening on their mobile phone screen than what's happening in the world around them. And it's not just the electromagnetic interference in our lives that we see on the surface via the telly screens and mobile screens and television screens and iPod screens that we're subject to. It's also the Wi-Fi soup that we are walking around in and swimming in all the time. This type of electromagnetic interference very much affects the organism as well. It keeps people programmed, keeps people locked down, keeps them shut down. And there's a great deal of experimentation going on in the field of wireless electromagnetics as well. And this is why they're putting smart meters on everyone's house, folks. It's not because they're smart, it's because they are Wi-Fi and they can create an electromagnetic field for you to be swimming in. They can create an electromagnetic environment that affects you in negative ways or in the ways that they want you to be affected. They can literally change people's moods with electromagnetism. And we're seeing Wi-Fi being promoted very, very much as well. The new Apple Macs that have come out, the new MacBook Pros, you'll notice they do not have an Ethernet port. They don't even have the ability for you to be able to plug an Ethernet cable into your MacBook Pro because they expect you to be using it as a Wi-Fi device. They want you to be using it as a Wi-Fi device. And that's why they've removed the Ethernet port. They say it's because we can make the Mac more slim. Look, it's lovely and slim now. It's much more user-friendly, but it's not. It's because they are pushing you towards using wireless technology. It's very difficult to go and find a wired keyboard and a wired mouse in most stores now. They still make them, but the stores just don't stock them because they want people to be using Wi-Fi, because they want people swimming in this electromagnetic soup. And there's a reason for this, folks, and it all ties in with the transhumanist agenda and with keeping human consciousness locked down, because we are electromagnetic beings. Everything we experience is electrical, and that's why they want you swimming in this Wi-Fi soup all the time. And like I said, folks, it's still an experimental thing. They're still looking for the right frequencies. They're still looking for ways to affect the human organism, and they're still looking for ways to create the electromagnetic control grid that they want to create. And it's going to be different for almost every person because everybody's biology is different. But what we see when we look at the electromagnetic control grid, and we tie it all in with the vaccinations, and we tie it all in with the geoengineering, what we see is that the entire environment on this planet and every species on this planet is being altered, is being genetically modified and electromagnetically modified. Every single species on this planet is being altered, ladies and gentlemen, and the same goes for human beings. We are being altered, and we are being led down into a control grid, the likes of which people can barely imagine. And the only way we're going to escape where this system is going, and they're really pushing for it, folks, they're really pushing for this global grid, they're really pushing for a new world order, they're really, really pushing to get this control grid in place. And the only way we're going to prevent it, and the only way we're ever going to establish any type of human freedom, is if we can put down our stuff and stand together as a united community. And I've been pushing this message for so long now, folks. There is no remedy that you're going to find anywhere else. Even with people who have alternate systems they wish to put in place, you're not going to be able to put any of these alternate systems in place until you have a united community that respects each other enough to want to bring about some effective change. So there's no good offering people an alternate system if they're lacking the basic respect for each other that is required to implement any type of alternate system. It has to start there. It has to start with grassroots action by each member of the community who is awake, who's willing to step up to the plate and start sharing information with the people around them and start leading by example in all that they do. That's the only way change is going to be brought about, regardless of any type of new system that anybody thinks will work. Because if you don't have the respect of the community, then it's just going to be argued and thrown out, and people are not going to want to have anything come into their lives which may rock the boat and may cause them to have to shift their perspective. That's why the perspective has to be shifted first. And it will only come by people rethinking the way they approach others and rethinking the way they interact with the world around them. That's where change has to come from. That's where the first change has to come from. That is the basic foundation stone that needs to be laid before we can build anything on it. We have to have that respect in our communities. And so people have to put down their stuff with other people. And I've so often done talks where I've spoken about the nature of reality and the nature of yourself and the nature of your body and what you are and how you're simply downloading a frequency, what you really are, what your body is, where your consciousness comes from. I spend so much time on this because I think it's a really empowering understanding. I really do. Once I truly understood what I am and where my consciousness comes from, what my body is and what consciousness is and what this reality is, how everything is made up of electromagnetic frequencies, it changed my life. It changed the way I interact with people. It changed the way I interact with the world, changed the way I view the world. And I believe that this is a key understanding that people need to have. And if they can truly grasp the concept of how reality actually works and what they really are, all of the barriers between people break down. I really, really, truly, absolutely believe this with every fiber of my being, folks. And I think that people that can't see this just simply can't grasp the concept of what they are. I can't grasp the concept of what the body computer is and what their consciousness is. And yet it's true and it's obvious. Once you really can see it, once you step back and you allow yourself to be open to the information and it really sinks in, then it's inarguable. And just the fact that it's inarguable makes the information absolutely profound because it is an ultimate truth. And it is an ultimate truth which has the ability to change the way you view the world and change your perspective of reality. And when that perspective is changed and you're looking at things from the correct perspective, suddenly all the barriers between you and the people around you break down. And it is at that point that the world can change, because it is at that point that the human race is open to this change occurring. And that's the only way it's going to happen, folks. The change can come, but people have to be open to the change. And that's only going to happen if they are aware and open to the information. You know, we have the opportunity to create a beautiful future here, folks. But what it's going to take is for people to understand and realize that they are the future. You are the future. The actions that you undertake now are what shape the future. The way you perceive reality now and the steps that you begin to take right now are what shapes the future. And if you sit back and wait for the world to change into something better than what it is now without bothering to participate yourself, then it will change, but it may not bring about the change that you would have hoped to have seen. And all you really have to do is start taking positive steps and positive actions in your own life and affecting the people in your immediate circles, the people that are around you right now. Just doing the right thing by these people, helping these people discover themselves, helping these people grow, helping these people become empowered, become confident in themselves, helping these people stand up and question anybody who claims to have authority over them, and questioning the actions of the councils and the governments around them. It's only if we do this that we are going to bring about change. And don't ever think that your actions can't make a difference, because they can. Every action that's ever made a difference has started with one person. It started by small actions taken by one solitary individual that has, by their actions, created ripples that have flowed out into the community around them. And that's what we need, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, every action that's ever been undertaken on this planet that's brought about change was started by one person having one idea. And that idea got into the minds of others, and they supported that idea. The whole control grid that's in place now is just an idea that somebody put in place of how the world should be. Unfortunately, they were powerful enough to be able to maneuver themselves into a position where they were able to put their idea into the scholastic system and thereby teach it to children from a very early age and teach people to be subservient to authority, teach people to never question their elders, never question their peers, never question authority, and to always do what they were told. But regardless of how many people do this and how many people believe in the system and believe the system is real, it's still just an idea. And if people can rediscover themselves, what they'll find is that this idea is actually somebody else's idea. It's not anything that we came up with on our own, and it's not anything that we discovered we needed to do by ourselves. It's an idea, a concept that has been instilled into us and programmed into us, and we have been trained to act this way. We've been trained to believe that we are always subservient to authority, that if we wish to enjoy ourselves, we're able to go to designated enjoyment areas, such as the parks we have in cities or certain festivals or concerts which are put on for our enjoyment. But even when we go to these places, we have to walk between the lines. We have to do what we're told. We have to abide by certain rules. We can never go out and truly experience ourselves and truly be free, because we're simply not allowed to do so. And it's all due to other people's ideas that have been superimposed over our consciousness. And we have to rediscover ourselves, folks. We have to start putting our own ideas in place. Start rediscovering our own creative potential. Because that's what this system has done. It's removed that creative potential from us. That's one of the biggest things that this system attempts to do, is to curb any type of creative potential, curb any type of independent thought. The only creative potential they want you to have is something that will serve the system. And if you have an idea, then they want to be able to regulate and control that idea. They want to be able to hijack it and use it as something which serves their purposes and the purposes of compounding the government control and compounding the problem. They don't ever want any ideas which are going to help establish human freedom. They don't want any ideas which are going to nurture any type of expansion of human consciousness, because that does not help the controllers. And so that's what we have to do, folks. We have to start having our ideas and nurturing our ideas and supporting the ideas of others and putting these ideas into practice, not living our life by someone else's idea of what reality should be. We have to open ourselves up to the art of our own lives and open ourselves up to expressing our own creative potential. I think we're all very creative individuals, ladies and gentlemen. I do. I think that we have the ability to create any type of world we wish to create. And all that would be required for us to do so is to embrace our own creative potential and respect others in embracing theirs and support others in embracing theirs. You find that if you have some creative idea and someone else has some creative idea, you put it all together, you come up with something truly marvelous. But we don't do that. We tend to squash each other's ideas, unless it's something which will potentially make a lot of money for us. These are the only ideas that we really nurture. You notice that. It's the economic pathogen, folks. If you're going to have a good idea in this reality, then the good ideas are the ideas which make lots of money. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about supporting the economic model, rather than supporting the art of our own lives and supporting the freedom of human creative potential. And that's the way we need to be going. That's what we need to get back, folks. We need to get back to ourselves. We need to rediscover ourselves, rediscover our own heart space, and express that energy into the world around us. It's a difficult thing to do, and it's a long road back from where we are. But I believe we can do it if we simply apply ourselves. But any chance we have to apply ourselves, folks, it's not going to happen until we discover ourselves. It's not going to happen until we respect ourselves. And I really, truly believe that if you do respect yourself, then respect for others comes by default. It really does. If you don't respect others, it's because you haven't truly discovered yourself yet. I firmly believe this, because when you understand how reality works, respect for others really does come by default. It isn't even something that you have to try to do. Respect for others is a natural byproduct of self-discovery. I've found that to be an ultimate truth as well. And again, we are getting very, very close to the end of the show here, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to have to leave it here for now. I'll keep you posted next week on what happens at the Bentley Gasfield protest that I'm attending on Monday morning. I really do hope that they let me speak this time. I've found many instances where I've gone to protests, and once they found out what I'm going to say, they somehow can never seem to find time for me to actually get up and talk. So I'm really hoping that it's not going to be this way at the Bentley Gas protests. I really hope that we do make a difference this weekend, folks. So I'll keep you posted, and I'll mention it on next week's show. I'd like to send out a warm thank you to anybody who has ever made a contribution to thecrowhouse.com. I have an Indiegogo campaign there at the moment as well. I'm trying to raise £3,000 so that I can stay on air for the next 6 months, folks. I'm about a third of the way there. I'd like to thank the 39 people that have donated over the last 2 months. It's nice to see some support coming from some quarters. But if I'm not able to raise the money with the campaign, folks, I really don't know how long I'm going to be able to stay on air. Things are getting very tight for me over here. But I'll just play that by ear, and we'll see how we go. Thank you for joining me on the air today. Thank you for any support you've ever given me. I will look forward to speaking to you all again next week. Please take good care until then. And do know that you are the change that can happen in the world, folks. All you have to do is apply yourself. Don't ever doubt yourself. You can do it. But that's it for me, folks, and I will look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please take good care until then. In Lakesh.